Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Star Citizen Live, Invictus Launch Week Vehicle Q&A. That's a mouthful. I'm your host, Jared Huckabee, and joining us on the show this week are an esteemed panel of Star Citizen vehicle people, some of which probably need no introduction, but as every show is somebody's first show, we're going to take the time and go through it nonetheless. We'll start immediately above me. Richard, tell us who you are and what you do for Star Citizen.
Yeah. So I'm the product owner of the vehicle experience team. So I'm responsible for the vehicle experience, the tuning side of the ships, and the weapon balance and the targeting and stuff. So,
all right. And then immediately counterclockwise, Dave Colson, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm a gameplay programmer and the product owner of the vehicle feature team. We work on all the vehicle features and gameplay features for vehicles, pretty much.
Okay. And last but certainly not least, immediately to my, John Crewe?
Hi, my name's John. I'm the vehicle director, and are we doing this thing?
We do this thing?
I'm the vehicle director, and I look after the vehicle experience team, the vehicle feature team, the vehicle tech team, and the two vehicle content teams.
All right. Now, as most people are probably aware, Invictus Launch Week is set to begin later today. I don't have a specific time for you. It's when all the lights turn green and everybody thinks everything is ready. So in coordination with Invictus Launch Week, we decided to bring some of our vehicle folks together and do a little roundtable, answer some questions from the Star Citizen community. As usual, you can submit your questions in one of two places. If you're watching live on Twitch, you can do so in the Twitch chat, where you can preface your question with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. It's going to help our community team pull it out from all the other conversation that's going on. And earlier this week, we put up a thread on Spectrum where folks were able to submit their questions and then vote up which ones they wanted to see answered most. So we are going to start with the questions from the thread there. First one is, what can you tell us about the reworked shield tech? Is it still being worked on?
It is still being worked on. That reworked shield tech is mostly to do with SDFs. The idea that previously we would have the ship encased in like a mesh that someone would make, but now that is like calculated automatically with this SDF. So an SDF, if you haven't heard of it before, is this data structure that lets you query how far away a point is from the ship. Mm-hmm. So you can effectively work out very easily if a bullet or a projectile has hit the ship, and it'll result in much more reliable shield hits and stuff like that.
All right, and of course SDF is being used for quite a few things, not just the shields. On ISC, folks have been used. The SDF's being used for the new reentry effects, and there's a couple of I'm trying to think of other things SDF's being worked on right now, and I'm blanking.
VFX is a huge one. There's so much VFX that you really want to like conform to the ship, and it's time consuming, right, to like author all these effects for every different ship. So this automates a lot of it.
Yeah, especially when you have to deal with animating ship parts and bits that fall off the ship. It sort of, you get that, not for free, but it's significantly easier than how the current systems work.
Okay. Next question: any movement on AI blades for turrets?
Indirectly, yes. So something we're planning out at the moment is a lot of the precursor work. So anyone that was around before item 2.0 will have been familiar with like avionics motherboard items. Mm-hmm. So we're doing the sort of the planning for the revamp of those to go in the ships, and obviously a big part of that is all the blades you put in. So we obviously need to get the base computer item in first, and then we can work on the blades. But that's all being planned out in the very near future.
Right, and just for folks who maybe have joined the project since the last time we mentioned AI blades, they are components that go into the vehicles that will allow you to automate the actions of the manned turrets.
Yeah, so the vehicles will all have computers, the small ones, medium ones. They each have a varying amount of blade slots in there, and you can put all these different sort of blades in. Sort of the most popular one will be I want to slave a manned or remote turret to the pilot seat, and that would take up like one of the blade slots or more, perhaps.
Right. Let's see. You knew this was coming. You can't get through a vehicle question without something about the Merchantman. What can you tell us about current plans for the Merchantman? We last heard that the Carrick team was going to move on to there. Is that still the case?
What's the Merchantman? Not heard of that ship before.
Sounds vaguely familiar.
So yeah, the plan was the Carrick team would move on to the Merchantman, but as we were coming towards the end of the Carrick, we had the team do a bit of sort of pre-scouting of the Merchantman, and based on the work that we did on Defender and all the problems we hit with that, which we sort of discussed around its release, we wanted to spend a lot more time concepting it to sort of make it a really solid ship, because I know the Merchantman known as a super vocal about things. Looking at the concept, you can see there's quite a lot of inconsistencies with some of them. We want to rule all them out, have it all sort of planned on paper, so to speak, before we start modeling it out. So Paul Jones and those guys are going to be spending time tightening up the concepts, and then the production team will hit it at some point in the future. But the Carrick team has essentially been split into two smaller ones that are working on two other ships.
Right. We learned a lot of lessons with the Banu Merchantman about how to do the organic style design for the Banu as far as a ship, and I imagine there are a lot of lessons we had to take from that and apply to the Merchantman, which is a ship at a much larger scale. Yeah,
it's like we have with other ships. You can do a ship at a small scale in manufacture, and you have an idea of how it's going to work at a larger scale, but it's not a one-to-one translation.
Okay. From the live chat, is having a beard a requirement for working at CIG? No, we let Dave Colson work here.
I got some stubble. I got some stubble goatee.
It's not a beard.
Fair enough.
I don't know what the deal is with game devs and beards. My face is just fat and I
don't
hate
have
it.
time
That's why I
to
have a beard.
shave.
It's like game designers and like lumberjack check shirts. It's almost like a requirement.
Will future vehicles like the Mercury also come with associated gameplay like data running?
It's something that we're definitely trying to move more towards. Like in the past, it was very much we've done the ship, so let's just release it. Sort of starting this year, the end of last year, where we can, we try and release some of the gameplay with it. So the Red was a good example in that we had a very basic form of medical gameplay in. The Mercury is obviously twofold. It's a cargo runner and a data runner, so it's not as critical to ship with data running because it does have another purpose alongside it. But it's we'll see as we get closer to the time.
Yeah,
because data running is essentially cargo running with a data commodity.
Yeah, I think it's important. And we've touched on this topic before a couple times in the past. Obviously, when you want to, when things can align the way we hope they do, yes, we would always like to release a ship with its associated gameplay. But as often is the case, the associated gameplay is done by teams that are outside the ship team, for instance, and different schedules and different workloads and different priorities. So, sometimes those two don't always align, and a ship is ready to go before the associated gameplay is. Much like I think one of the bigger examples is the Reclaimer.
Yes.
So it's
when you have that asset just sat there, sort of ready to go beyond any gameplay, it's a very hard decision to go, well, shall we just keep this to ourselves for another 3, 6, 9, 12 months, or do we give it?
And I imagine that plays some factor into your scheduling too. When you're trying to schedule what ship is going to be built next, you have to look at, well, is there a chance that the associated gameplay can come online with it? And if there isn't, maybe we don't prioritize making that ship sometimes.
Yeah, and the vehicle content schedule is it's currently mapped out 12 months from now. And I literally sent an email just before this call about what things are we going to put in the next slots after that.
Let's see, what else? Speaking of ships that get built and then don't have the requisite systems, this question is simply Hull C?
Hull C is... yeah, there's a lot of technical obstacles to that. Some of them we're actually making progress on, like you need docking and stuff for the Hull C to be useful. And yeah, John can speak to all of the other stuff. There's just so much technical hurdles to get that ship out.
Yeah, so docking is obviously a big one, which we're handling on the vehicle side. Then the other things really are having multiple physics grids in a ship and having vis areas and area shapes scale dynamically at runtime. So area shapes are basically just a markup that we can use to define a room's volume. So how much or how large a room is, so you can have the audio tied to it, to the air tied to it, and vis areas control the visibility in those areas. The engine assumes they are always static and they never change. All you can do is you can turn on and off a portal to look in or move in and out of them. Obviously, the hull C has this big section that expands in the middle, so these rooms have to dynamically scale at runtime, which is something the engine never designed to do. Needs adjusting to do that.
Problem.
And it's the same for physics grids. At the moment, we have one physics grid per ship.
Mm-hmm.
Having multiple ones for the front and the back is a relatively easy change. But having that third one that then dynamically scales at runtime is the other big issue. So yeah, docking those core engine problems, the big first hurdles, and then we move into sort of performance and optimization. At the moment, SEU is 1-to-1 match, so the hull C has like 4,000 odd.
Right.
SEU of cargo at the moment, that would be 4,000 boxes stuck to the outside of the ship, which is not going to be great for performance. So we need to have the cargo system, which is another team outside the vehicle team completely, work on using the different size boxes. So if I buy 32 SEU of stuff, don't fill my ship with 32 individual boxes, fill it with one 32 SEU box. And then that just scales for the whole C. So instead of having 4,000 boxes on, you might only have 100 boxes. And that pretty much touches them all. So a lot of those now, they've been sort of in limbo for a while. I'd say the vast majority of those are either in progress now or going to be imminently in progress.
For those making comments about my volume, this is one of Teams' new features, is what I'm figuring out. I have made no changes to my volume level whatsoever since we started the show. And we started with Jared is too loud to Jared is too quiet. And I'm super happy about it. Thank you, Teams. Let's see what else we got. From the live chat, do you have anything new to share about the Drake Corsair?
Not really. It's the short answer to that.
Okay.
Just a short answer.
Yeah.
Not every ship is being worked on at every moment.
There's a lot of ships and only so many people.
Yep. Let's see. What can you tell us about... Oh, here's a big one. What can you tell us about operating costs for vehicles like maintenance, fuel, etc., especially as it relates to a solo player's ability to operate a large capital ship like an Idris or Javelin?
I think the discussion with that is that it should be almost prohibitively expensive, such that you could do it by yourself, but it's just, so much money that it'll cripple you.
Yeah.
It should be like, spread over a group or an organization. It'll be much more feasible and manageable.
It's technically possible, but not realistically possible. Yeah, you can fly one of those ships by yourself. You could hire an NPC crew to have it instead of other human players. That just adds more cost. If you fill it with humans, they're going to want some share of whatever you're doing. It's realistically not something that you use as your daily driver around the verse. Although someone will. There's always someone that will have their javelin out every day.
Yeah,
Their javelin out.
It'll be my daily driver when it's out.
I have this image
For
of
about 5 seconds.
someone going to the groceries in their javelin, parking outside Tesco's or something.
Let's not kid ourselves. There will be some magnate who corners the market on Quantanium or something and is a Star Citizen billionaire, and they will, just as a matter of status and a matter of effort and a matter of I'm going to do it the hardest possible way, they will be solo operating a javelin out there, and it will happen. But for the amount of effort that it will take, by all means.
Yeah.
And I know that because that's exactly the type of player I was when I played MMOs. Let's see, what else do we got here? what can you tell us about vehicle customization, components, AI blades, tuning, etc.? It's been a while since we've heard anything.
It's all still planned, that sort of those customization elements. I mean, that people will obviously have components in game that they can customize now. There's going to be more of them. There'll be more variety of them. AI blades we talked about a few minutes ago. Tuning of thrusters is a good one. So I know there's been some like very early milestone or Kickstarter rewards with tuning kits that we'll deal with. But something that we do want to do is have like different thruster sets for ships, which I don't know if Dave and Rich want to.
Yeah, we've done a huge amount of the prerequisite work to support that, and we're pretty much there in terms of like the core vehicle system actually being able to do that. It's now comes to a matter of actually doing it and like fitting it in with the economy and having the shops all support it and everything, which is a lot more work.
Yeah, there's definitely plans in the very near term to have at least one ship support having two different thruster sets that you can purchase in game.
It's not to mention as well that obviously having multiple thruster sets doubles the or almost doubles the tuning work on the flight balancing of that ship, because now you have to make sure that ship works in a reasonable capacity for two different configurations.
Yeah. I think the ability to customize ships is, beyond just one of the current topics is paint and stuff like that. But being able to go through and fully customize your components and swap out, everything that you possibly can, making a ship your own is one of those hallmark aspects of Star Citizen. Those things that we've been talking about for a while. So that's one of the things that really excites me about our future is being able to take a merchantman or a Mercury or even an Aurora and be like, this it's an Aurora, sure, and there are 1,000 of them in the verse, but this one is mine.
Yeah.
So it's that dream, it's that Millennium Falcon, it's that Han Solo. I've made a lot of special modifications myself, so if you get on board, yeah. All right, what else do we got? Hey, Dave Colson. I have a feeling this one's for you. What is the status of the second half of the IFCS update that was planned? Hybrid thrusters, thruster curves, atmospheric overheating. They've obviously got a list. This person's been paying attention.
So they have. And the exciting news is that I think everything that you just said, Jared, is pretty much ready to go for 310. Obviously, that we need to finish it and put the fine tuning on it, but we've been reviewing it and making sure it's ready to ready at a reasonable standard that we are happy releasing it, and all of it we're pretty much happy to go. So there's like the aerodynamics, we've overhauled the aerodynamics, and the efficiency curves obviously make a huge difference. They if you haven't heard of them before, they apply efficiency curves to thrusters that things like atmosphere, particularly atmosphere, will affect the output of the thruster. There's various other subtleties. There's loads of stuff happening in that. I don't want to go in too deep because we're going to actually have a more in-depth segment on ISC, I believe, coming up in the future. But suffice to say, it's almost here. It's almost
really close. Yeah, it's really close. And it's been really fun to tune it as well. So I'm really excited to get it in the players' hands, and just see what they can do with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's talk about that, David. You're on the vehicle content team or feature team.
Feature
team, and Rich, you're on the experience team. So I think that this particular topic is a good way to kind of illustrate the difference between the teams. So David's team is creating the feature, and then your team goes in and balances it, tweaks it, adjusts it, tunes it.
Yep. Yeah. So we basically get in there, we tune it, we push it to its limits, and bring it back and get ships working, and then we'll provide feedback to David. Then we'll sit together and work on some solutions, some of the problems we found with the feature, maybe, and then we'll just carry on to improve it. you know, and then it's kind of our job to really finish off the fine tuning of all the ships, and you know, kind of provide the unique character that we're going for in these ships, you know, because we've got small ships and then we've got massive ships, and they've all got to behave in atmosphere. So it's about providing that kind of unique performance that these will have, and you know, so I am kind of excited to get that in the players' hands and you know, see if they enjoy it and see if they enjoy the differences as well.
The big advantage we have with vehicle experience team is that they, Rich and his guys have this like really holistic vision over the design and feel and gameplay of vehicles, whereas vehicle feature programmers and designers tend to be like narrowly focused on they're doing their thing. So what'll happen is like, we'll work on aerodynamics or whatever, but then Rich and his guys will have this perspective of how that fits in with this other thing and this other thing. And so it's kind of their responsibility to make sure that the whole holistic experience is like tip top.
Cool.
Yeah, and before the event happened, the two teams are literally sat next to each other in the office, so it's very collaborative. It's not like one team does something, sends it off to another floor in the building, they play with it, send it back. Everyone's all just sat together, collaborating on it.
Normally.
Yeah, normally, while we're basically just on teams at the moment, having lots of calls all the time, which is very different. But it's working pretty well for us.
All right. Next question's another single worder. Redeemer.
It's a lot of these single question.
Well,
I'm surprised this thread wasn't just every single ship ?
We've done this before, and that has happened before.
Yeah, true. Redeemer. So all I'm going to say is I would highly recommend people to check out the Invictus Launch Week when it's live, especially the Aegis days, and go look in the expo halls.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, we got a Carrick question. Is it still planned to add antennas to the Carrick, as well as the protection for the cockpit?
Yep, still planned. The reason we didn't do them for the launch of it is we didn't have a nice way to trigger them. Obviously, the antennas were there for like jump point mapping, and without jump points in the PU, there was nothing to do with them. And the protection for the cockpit was just we didn't have the time to skin and rig this incredibly complicated shield shutter system. So it's all designed out concept stage. If you watch the CitizenCon presentation that Paul, Steve, and myself did, you'll have seen how it's going to look. It's not quite the same as the original concept, which was much like a shop front roller shutter. It's more heavy plated, but it's definitely going to be a thing.
Okay. Let's see. From the live chat, will the Mercury Star Runner be able to carry a rover or any vehicle other than the bikes?
Yes. So this is something that I know there's been lots of discussion recently on some of the changes to the Mercury. This is one of the sort of instigating factors to that we wanted to. It was so close to fitting one. It seemed wrong not to massage the interior slightly that it could fit. Obviously, the rear entrance was not quite large enough for it, so we increased that, which did have the unfortunate consequence of having to lose that central round middle engine, but the ship itself is not going to be any slower from the lack of it. We've added, I think, 2 extra smaller ones in the wings to compensate for it. And we readjusted the turret position so that there was length for a rover to go in there. And the turrets themselves will they're not going to sit proud of the ship all the time. They're going to compact in like other ships.
Okay. So yeah, there have been lots of Mercury Star Runner questions in chat since they saw the first image of the Hollow Bureau model.
Yeah.
Sometimes let's talk a little bit about why a ship can change from the concept phase into the implementation. Sometimes there are drastic changes.
Yes.
I would just say I think the Car-2-Wall losing a second seat. Sometimes they're incredibly close to the concept, like the recent Prowler. What are some of the reasons, and I want you to talk in general so that this is an answer that can apply to many things. What are some of the reasons why these things change?
A lot of it is just the how the pipelines got better over time. So if you look at a lot of the older ships, a lot of them didn't really consider component placement or metrics. Like the Redeemer is a great example of a ship that didn't adhere to metrics particularly well. So when we get into production, things have to change to fit. And for the Mercury in particular, the concept artist that did a great job of fitting everything in, but it's been a year plus since we did that concept, and things in the engine update over time. So when that concept was done, we were only just dealing with landing gear compression. So the landing gear that were concepted worked fine for how the game worked then, but now we've learned a lot of things. We need to beef up the landing gear, change their position ever so slightly so the ship settles better, because you can make a nice asset in Max or whatever, but until it's a physical thing in engine and you see how it lands and settles on its landing gear, you're never 100% sure how it's going to work. So we had to beef up the landing gear, slightly change the placement, and all those things knocked on to, if you have bigger, stronger landing gear that perhaps have greater length, so you have better compression, so it lands easier, you need a bigger volume to put these things into the ship. So that then has knock-ons to the hull, because you need a bigger thing. You need bigger doors to cover the landing gear. They need somewhere to go. And like one little thing, like I want to have 0.5 meter more landing gear clearance, can have huge knock-ons to the underside of a ship. Because
we don't cheat our ships; they are 1-1. The interior fits in the exterior, unlike the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah,
like that. I also have to imagine. I don't say this with any information. This is just a question. I have to imagine the air ducts, the compartments, the getting around. One of the features of the Mercury that probably necessitated some further development. Just getting players to work, getting the player model to crawl through there and stuff.
Yeah,
I would think so. Yeah. All right, let's move on. We've seen a couple Vanguard questions. Do you think the Vanguard series urgently needs a revision to its weapons? It is currently a ship with little firepower in relation to its role as a heavy fighter and a military escort, according to this person. Would you agree with that? What do you think?
It's probably one of my favorite ships, the Vanguard, and I think it fits pretty well with the weapons it's got. I mean, it's got a good balance of weapons and missiles.
I disagree saying it's got little firepower.
Yeah, because it's got quite a good kill, kind of ratio in the PU, really.
Yeah, it's like looking at the analytics in AC and PU, it is top 3, top 5 at worst, patch to patch on the amount of kills it gets. I can see it's not ideal because it has the mix of fixed and gimbaled weapons. So if you don't like that mix, your only choice is to go all fixed, which gives you more DPS, which only improves the situation. And when we did the rework, we had to make that decision at that point of, do we stick to the concept of those 4 fixed nose guns? And he talked with Chris a lot. I was like, yep, that's an iconic part of the ship. Rich's cat's made an appearance.
Oh,
I missed it. Oh, there he is.
Here comes Rocky. He wants a piece.
So yeah, we decided to keep them, which ties us into various problems. I know there's been lots of solutions, like get rid of those nose guns, make them gimbaled. Like if they gimbal, there's nowhere for them to gimbal. They're all going to clash into each other. Get rid of the chin gun, stick it under the wings. If you put it in the wings, there's no space for landing gear, no space for missiles. Where it is, we're pretty happy with. Maybe the bespoke guns could have some tuning to them, but it's not going to get another rework.
If you had 6 weeks on your Star Citizen pool of how long it would take for a cat to appear in an official Star Citizen video, congratulations,
there
you won. 6 weeks is how long it took for the work from home. So I get what you're saying about the Vanguard, and I get we have those internal analytics that show kill death ratios and stuff like that. All that said, why do you think this person, and let's put ourselves in their shoes for a second, why do you think this person and others in chat would disagree with you? Why do you think they would think that the Vanguard isn't all that it could be?
So it's probably down to how we see it working in the future when We've got improved turrets because it's got a turret on the Vanguard. And we've also got some improvements coming to turrets that are going to make them much more effective. So that's kind of where we see it going. So although it's perfectly reasonable, I think, probably to feel it's probably not as powerful, that in the future, when we have a much improved turret experience and they're much more balanced towards actually where can they be able to shoot rivals, I think that's kind of where we see it going in the future.
And there's always the wild card of when a new ship comes into the game and upsets the meta. Like the Prowler is overperforming compared to what it should be doing, which sort of knocks into the Vanguard owner's territory. So is it that the Vanguard sucks, or is the Prowler is too good? And I would say that the Prowler is too good.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would say that fixed weapons in the current meta, whatever the current meta is somewhat.
That's actually another
limited.
good point, and something that we're fixing for 310. Like, we know fixed weapons have been pretty rubbish, certainly compared to gimbal assist and gimbals, and it's something we've worked on, and it seems to be significantly better. Yeah, it'd be a viable choice now between the two.
And Richard, I'm not going to say this to pick on you, but you're the one who brought it up, and I've got to. We've been hearing turret improvements for what seems like forever. I mean, we're going to fix turrets. It's sort of like Lucy with the football and Peanuts. It's like, we're going to get it this time. What can you tell us?
Well, I can't promise we're going to solve the world with this, but we feel it's, for like 310, it's a really good step.
Best I've ever played.
Yeah. You know, we've had some really positive play tests between the group where we've gotten a hammerhead, for example, and we've felt like kings, basically, you know. So, and that wasn't possible before.
We had one person flying a hammerhead and two people in the turret. So one was in the top turret and one was in the side turret. And we were just constantly spawning waves of AI. And within about 5 minutes, we'd killed 50 people just with turrets, which is pretty unheard of with how turrets have been. And there's a whole slew of turret improvement. It's not just one thing we've done. We've pretty much reworked them from the ground up. And I believe we'll be doing, if we're not doing an ISC episode on it soon, that there is going to be a sort of a post detailing a lot of the combat and flight changes for 310 that will come before 310 that will explain it all.
All right. Sounds good. From turrets, we'll go to another big question mark over the years. The Constellation Taurus is the last from the Constellation series to be finished. Compared to the speed with which other ships in the series came into play, is there a specific problem related only to the Taurus?
It's time to get those conspiracy theories out the way of the Constellation Taurus. There's nothing really particular that stopped it beyond other ships have taken priority. At the end of the day, it's another cargo ship. We have cargo ships in the game already. It's more work than it seems to do it because it has exterior hull geometry changes and significant interior changes. Unlike the Phoenix, where the changes were sort of constrained to one central section of the ship, the Taurus has that second secret cargo area in the front and the extended middle section. So there's a lot of work there. And when it comes to, do we finish the Taurus or do we get the Prowler in game or do we get something else in game? The poor Taurus always seems to lose out. But it is back in the schedule. When we're confident of the release date, it will go on the roadmap. And all the Connie variants will be closed out. There's no secret entire rework of the Connies on the cards.
Yeah. You touched on something I want to make sure we clarify. Earlier in the show, you mentioned that we've got our roadmap of things that we are working on over the next year, and then you just mentioned that when when we believe we can release the Taurus, it'll go on the public roadmap. And
Yes.
it's an important distinction. I think is worth pointing out again. The public roadmap is our anticipated releases, not the schedule of things that we're working on at any given time. So we are, as folks will see with the recently revealed G12 and stuff like that. We are working on things that are not on the roadmap. The roadmap is a list of expected or anticipated releases, or publishes, or whatever word you want to use for that. Let's see, docking. What can you tell us about docking? Is the whole docking stuff going to be universal, or is it just certain ship types to certain ship types and stations? Give us a primer on docking.
So docking requires ports on the ships to match up. So we're planning on two different effectively metrics, or like shape sizes of docking ports that are not compatible with each other. And so if you want to dock one port to another, then they will work. If you want to dock that port to another dock, then it won't. And I think most of the ships already have their docking ports there. I think, for example, the Constellation has the smaller docking port size on the sides, the round one, and then there's a larger docking port size. And then the stations will have docking ports of varying sizes, so that ships, particularly the larger ships that maybe are too big for the landing pads, they will just dock with the station, particularly rest stops and things like that. But otherwise, yeah, docking is progressing. We're working on it at the moment, and trying to resolve a lot of the issues that come up with it. There's some, like, shall we say, special cases where, for example, the Merlin docking with the Constellation, that's a special case because it doesn't use either of those two metrics.
Right.
And another special case is the detachable, like, command pod on the Caterpillar. Mm-hmm. So things like that. I think also the Hull C is also an exception. So we need to kind of work through how those are going to work and how we integrate them with the rest of the system.
Okay. Is there a kind of ship you've wanted to create but haven't been able to yet? I know, John, you fought for that A10.
It's a tough question, Jerry.
Yeah,
for a while.
for literally years, I wanted to do the Space A10, and I was like, no, nobody wants that. It's like, I want that, so let's do it. And finally managed to get the Ares out. So I haven't got a new one that I want to do because that took a long time to get through.
Yeah. Although it's heartening to know that even you have to fight to get a ship into the game.
Yep.
The top of my mind is like older ships. Like I like the idea that our universe has this whole history,
mm-hmm.
and I would love to see like some historical ships in the lore of the universe, like kind of showing you how the development of technology has like progressed. That is a very like high flying ambition though, but it just appeals to my sense of like lore in the game's universe.
Well, like a 57 Chevy or something, like a classic version of an existing ship. I'm with you. What about you, Richard?
Yeah, so I'd probably go for a mix of an M50 and a mix of the Herald. So something kind of bigger, beefier, with massive rockets on, but that can also really perform as well. You know, just something.
Would that be a racing ship?
Yeah, like a racing truck, right? A racing truck.
Space racing trucks.
Yeah.
What about you, Jared? I know.
You already know it. Well, I have several, but yeah, I gave up on my Origin stealth ship, the 404, spaceship not found. I gave up on that. But no, I still want the jalopy. I still want. It's actually kind of like what Dave wants. I want an old, beat up ship that you can't pledge for. You can only get it in the game. I mean, it is an absolute junker, and it's the kind of thing that you'd buy to get from A to B. Like when you're stranded on one planet and all your ships are somewhere else or whatever, you just need to get it from A to B. But then there could be a whole like quest line where you can like restore it. you know, you got to actually work to restore it but all completely in game. And then it would be like a point of pride at the end. You'd have that old junker completely restored, and people would know that you put, 100 hours of work into restoring and doing it. And that's what I want. If I can't have my Origin 404 spaceship not found, I want the jalopy. I want the jalopy that people can restore in the game. That's what I want. Either that or the one racing type ship that we don't have yet. It's our demolition derby. I want an anvil racer that's just got junk plates attached to it. Like it's you've got your M50 can do the maneuvering, and your 350R can beat you on the straightaway, and then this thing just goes. You can go around them, you can go past them, and then a demolition derby racer will go through them. That's what I want.
I'm thinking of like the trucks from Mad Max.
Yes.
But like a spaceship version of that.
I have. You asked me, John. I wasn't going to say anything.
I mean, that's
I got ideas.
The first time.
I got ideas.
Your creativity's going wild.
Why can't we turn the lights on or off or change the red alert state on our ships?
It's something scheduled, but it's in the grand scheme of things compared to some of the other tasks like docking. It's quite a low down the list. We have a lot of the systems in place because they obviously work automatically. It's just exposing that to the user and then making it behave with the automated systems. So it's something that's planned. It's just not on the immediate future.
Question from the live chat kind of builds on the customization question we had before. When designing ships, do you design them for one specific purpose, or do you consider that they can be customized into additional roles down the line?
It depends on the ship. Some are very single role focused. With like the Ares is a good example. Even though it has two variants, they're just how different do you want to kill something. You can't do anything but shoot with the Ares. But other ships, yeah, we do go, right, how customizable do we want this to be? Do we want it to be very lightly user customizable in that they can just change the components and the weapons, or do we want to go further and talk about modules swapping out and things like that?
I was going to say, then you got the other end of the spectrum, you've got the Endeavor.
And then there's the Endeavor.
The Endeavor at the far end of the spectrum.
What ship do you want to attach to your ship?
You looking forward to it?
Yes, I am.
Sorry. All right. Let's see. Any updates on the Mustang Alpha cargo hold?
It's pretty much one of the same technical blockers as the Hull C on a wildly different scale in that at the moment we can only have cargo grids inside a physics grid of a ship. Obviously the Mustang Alpha's one is on the outside of the ship, and so is the Hull C, and that system does not currently work when it's not inside the ship. So when we do the work for the Hull C, then the Alpha will get the same support.
Gotcha. I've seen a couple questions about whether the F8 Lightning will be available to pledge for during Fleet Week. F8 Lightning was featured prominently in our advertisements for the Fleet Week. It will not be available to pledge for the Fleet Week. We've made several statements before. We don't intend to make it available for pledge. It's just a military ship with a lot of mystique around it, so we thought it would be fun to use it in the promotional materials, kind of like having the Bengal in the original promotional video for Star Citizen, but there is no intention on making it available for a direct pledge. So some of you folks already knew that, but it's coming up in chat, so I want to address it again. Let's see. With all the tools CIG developed, is building and creating ships faster now than it used to be?
It is definitely a lot faster. I know back when we did the flight presentation at CitizenCon 2948, I think it was, we showed off all the new flight tools, and they have been continued. We continue to improve them. There's new tools for the aerodynamics and all sorts of stuff. And I know there's various other new tools for the other aspects of ships, but I think John mentioned the other day that our ships have also gotten more complicated. So there's more to do, but the tools are definitely light years ahead of what they used.
It's definitely quicker. Using the tuning example, when I first started, it was pretty much you open the XML and you look at these 6 set of numbers and you just type some other numbers in there and play it and go, no, that doesn't feel quite right. I'd put
you would have
zero
to like stop the game though, and like respawn the ship.
Stop the game, type it in the XML document, restart the editor, go, yeah, that's fine. And then over time, it's
a nightmare.
Got a live update, and then coming out of Excel, and then now we have all the cool tools that Dave's written and Rich uses day in, day out that does it live and gives you all sorts of information. And then on the art side as well, obviously the old way we used to do damage, where you'd essentially model the ship 4 times, and as each one went down to 75, 50, 25, 0%, you would swap that part out. Now we have the UV2 shaders. We model the ship pristine, we model some gubbins inside, and let shaders do all the magic in between.
Cool. I got a question about bikes here, space bikes. It's another one with a strong opinion in it. Bikes need to go much, much faster on the ground and in Atmo. Can we turn up the speed, please?
Yeah, we're looking into ways of doing this. Particularly in atmosphere, it's a lot easier. But part of the issue is that our terrains are quite rough, and so we're like carefully caught in this balance of we want these like low riding, exciting ground
speed,
like gravel
star stuff,
but like the planets are filled with all sorts of stuff, and so we have to kind of like, okay, well, we could like increase the height that they hover, and then you can go faster, but you know, it's like this weird balance where we're trying to push them as high as we can without it being annoying that you're just constantly hitting stuff. It used to be a lot higher when we first did it with IFCS2, and then it was just really annoying, so we had to lower it. But we're trying. We want it to be faster, and we're trying to make it faster.
Have you ever considered just increasing the speed and then going to the environment team and being like, that's as slow as we can make them, guys. You need to clear some of these rocks out.
I've tried it.
Yeah, we have tried that.
And it's one of those weird things as well. Like you get it in the real world. Like if you're driving in a low-down car versus like a SUV,
right?
We could make you be higher, but you have to go so much faster to get the same sense of speed as just skimming along the ground. We have the same problem in game. So where we are is sort of comfortable-ish. I still see videos.
We could probably go a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And just let you like have a little bit more, I guess, a little bit more responsibility about not hitting stuff.
Yeah.
And then we'll see what the thread's about.
Yeah. John, you make
why we hit stuff.
Yeah, you make a good point though. The higher you make it, the slower it invariably seems. I'm trying to remember the exact. I'm trying to remember the moment I discovered that, when I was just like, I can't remember what it was though, but I had a real like whoa eye-opening moment a year ago about our speeds, when I thought, oh, they're so slow, and then I can't. Terrible story. I started a story and then realized I couldn't remember it. So we're gonna move on. Will vehicle quantum fuel be normalized by tank size rather than a seemingly random number per vehicle? The example they give, the Pisces gets more range than the Terrapin with the same size S quantum fuel tank using the same quantum drive.
It's the range is not purely based on the fuel tank size though. Like there's more, obviously the usage rate of the quantum fuel is different for each ship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that as a primary factor, but there's various other reasons why it's not as simple as just the fuel tank size, right?
Yeah, you've got the drive that factors into it as well. And another thing which sort of gets confusing is the ship matrix, and it sort of says this ship has one small quantum fuel tank, and this ship has one small quantum fuel tank, and eventually we want to have those tanks be physicalized things on the ship you can target, which means they need to not just be a metric box like all of our other components, because fitting them in everywhere. Like in a real spaceship, you have it all in the wings, you have it under the floor, wherever you can find space for it. So long term, they'll be bespoke to the ship, and they'll be almost like modeled, so you can see them wrapped around, and it'll be a combination of the drive you have in and the size of the tank, which will be bespoke to the ships. The current system of one size one versus one size one is just a very, very loose approximation of that for the short term.
I think in a simpler sense, though, they're saying that the Terrapin is a ship for exploration, and it should have a longer quantum range than the Pisces. And it doesn't.
And if there's stuff like that, then stick it on the issue council, and we'll look at it.
Yeah. This one may or may not be for. This sounds like a physics question, but we're going to ask it. Maybe somebody knows. Can you tell us the technical reasons why vehicles jiggle and fall out of the elevators when trying to load them onto some ships? And can you offer any insight about when this might be fixed?
So I do have an answer for this.
Okay.
How detailed do you want us to go?
We've got 9 minutes left in the show.
Okay.
And still a couple questions to
go. Having moving objects at rest on moving platforms is a really hard problem. And obviously physics grid solved this problem for inside ships, but elevators and ramps and stuff, they don't use physics grids. And it's partly because of like the way the physics grid system in vis areas works means that having exterior physics grids kind of has some weird issues. Like the vis areas will cause shadowing artifacts and other issues that we haven't been able to resolve yet. There's also the issue that John mentioned earlier that we can't have multiple physics grids on one ship. So the alternative is then to not use physics grids, but then we have these these elevators which teleport their position because they're animations. Like the ramp is an animation and stuff. And when you have teleporting objects trying to interact with a physics collision system, the system gets very confused because the objects move in ways that are not predictable to the system. Like if it was just a velocity, it would be predictable, right? And so if you imagine like a really complicated suspension system sitting on a teleporting platform, the collision system gets quite confused. So we either need to like break out those parts and simulate them manually with velocity and everything, or we need physics grids to work in a more complicated way. It's a really hard, really hard problem to get that right. And we're still trying to work through the sort of issues that we have with getting that fixed.
All right. Let's see how many more of these we can crack in before we run out of time here. I know, John, I know actually all of you have a go-no-go meeting to go to as soon as this is done, so I can't keep you extra time. With the new wind bug in 3.9, we saw some ships being blown away by the wind, like as if the ships had no mass at all. Can you tell us why that was?
So ships absolutely do have mass, but there was a bug in 3.9 that you were seeing the result of. Was actually that the wind was crazy strong. The wind at points in Lorville was gusting up to like 150, 200 kilometers an hour, which I'm pretty sure if you put a 747 in winds like that, it would start moving. It's crazy fast. So that's been fixed. They've been moved down. But there is also the bonus that the wind aerodynamic simulation wasn't as advanced in 3.9. Obviously in 3.10 it'll be much more advanced, and the way ships interact with wind will be more realistic. And so I guess from those two angles, the results should be a more believable behavior.
Okay.
Yeah, and actors currently aren't affected by winds, and if they were, like you would have taken
player characters would
have way away,
blown kilometers away.
Yeah.
Hey. Let's see if we can't lightning some of these. Any updates on being able to spawn ships with their parasite vehicles inside?
I think we briefly talked about that earlier.
Yes, we are working on it.
Okay. Will the ship HUD rework finally allow our ships to retain what we set the MFDs to?
Eventually, yes. That is part of the MFD rework that we have been working on for quite some time. We absolutely want that. You'll have persistence on the MFDs and the pages on the MFDs, and you also would be able to like customize your HUD a little bit and have persistence on that as well. But that will come as the MFD rework eventually comes to fruition.
Okay. Has the cargo changed for the 890 jump? Why is this bug taking so long to tackle? It has been known for over 2 patches.
So, as I briefly mentioned earlier, that the cargo system is not owned within the vehicle team, so it's on another team, so I don't want to speak for their priorities. But it's a bug to do with how the cargo system works out what's in a ship. Pretty much every ship except the 890 has all of its cargo grids attached in one way or the other, like either in the ship or attached to a ramp on the ship, whereas the 890 has both, and the cargo system just didn't know which. It doesn't know to combine those two methods together to give you the proper number. So at the moment, I think it only shows the amount that are in the hangar, not the ones on the actual lift. So when that bug's fixed by that team, it'll go back to what it's supposed to be, which is something like 448.
Okay. Richard, I feel like you probably have an opinion on this next one. What can you tell us about the future of ground vehicles, specifically the way they handle and operate? They don't seem to have gotten the attention that spaceships have.
It's definitely one of my passionate subjects is the ground vehicles, but we definitely see them as not up to the standards of spaceships. But we want to get the spaceship experience and the combat experience and the turrets, everything up to a really high standard that we're happy with. And then once we're not adding loads of features on top of that experience, we can move those resources onto the ground vehicles. So it's definitely going to be a focus in the future. And, we're already in the early design phase of kind of laying out what the requirements of ground vehicles are to build them technically within our engine. So, we're already thinking about it. But, as soon as we move those resources on, we'll start to see some progress with the ground vehicles as well.
All right.
Which I'm really excited about.
John, we know in the Fleet Week promotional materials we've seen the Javelins, we've seen the Idris, we've seen the F8. Conspicuous by its absence is the Polaris.
You mentioned it.
Yeah. Can you give us any kind of update whatsoever on the Polaris? Is it even in active development right now?
It is not, as of this moment right now, in active development with production artists and designers on it. As I mentioned earlier, the Carrick team had planned to move on to the Merchantman, but we wanted more concept work to do. We're also doing the same with the Polaris to make sure it's in a good enough state that we can hit the ground running with it. And it requires significantly less concept work than the Merchantman. So make of that what you will.
Okay. Again, not all things can be worked on at all times. Speaking of which, how's that second polish pass on the 600i coming along?
It's not come on anywhere. We've got a clear idea of what we want to do. So we know there's things from the 890 that we want to sort of bring over, just like that level of material and lighting. And we know the areas of the ship that we want to give more than just a touch-up pass to. So like making the crew quarters less cavernous and open, reducing some of the wasted bridge space, improving the flow around the ship. So it's probably going to turn into one of those things like the Vanguard touch-up, which turned into a full rework. So it's going to be more work than we originally planned. But as the ship exists and functions, it's low down the list of priorities to do.
Yeah. And then last, before we let you go, any updates on that enhanced ship modularity that was mentioned? It's one of our original stretch goals. Several ships, like the Retaliator, for instance, have modules that were made available for pledge. Anything you can tell us?
So one of the big pieces that is missing for that is the ability to have items attached, items such as the missile racks of the Retaliator inside the object containers of the vehicle, which is essentially the rooms inside the vehicle, attached to a vehicle and all communicating together. So the inside of the vehicle currently doesn't talk to the outside. I think we're going to talk about this more in a future episode of something. I can't remember what our shows are called anymore.
Okay. Calling all devs, actually. But
that's the one.
I'll let you finish and then we'll wrap up.
and at the moment, the missile racks on the Retaliator are attached to the outside of the ship. So if you took away that interior room and put the dropship module in, you just have these 2 torpedo racks still stuck on there. So we need to make those items be part of the object containers and swap in and out. And the work for that is actually scheduled in the upcoming quarter. Whether it's going to release in that quarter is not for me to say now.
Yes. All right. So that's it. That's our show. Thank you so much, David and Richard and John, for taking your time to be here with us, for carving this hour into the middle of go no go. This has been go no go week for 310. So I appreciate you making the time. We are at the last 2 weeks. We have attempted to host some Star Citizen streamers. If you watched last week, you saw me fail miserably in attempting to host Zavronimir TV. We are going to try hosting Zavronimir TV again this week, and I'm saying Zavronimir TV over and over again, so that I know I have the full name and not just Zavronimir. They've actually taken the command away from me, so we're gonna let our community team. They've already started the command. I can see it calling up people now. So when you do go in there, be sure you tell them that Ulf said hi. We'll try last week's again. Next week, we are back with an episode of Calling All Devs, focused on salvage. So look for that next Friday. For Star Citizen Live, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next week, everybody. Take care.